We make thousands of decisions every day. Some of them we're more aware of than others. We probably don't notice the thought process when deciding to clean our teeth or sticking the kettle on, but we're more aware of getting out of bed or hitting snooze when the alarm goes off for that early morning swim session. You can take a simple choice like that. Do I get up and swim or hit snooze? And examine it further. These choices, these thoughts have repercussions. They create feelings and actions. Get up and swim? That creates a feeling of resolve. This is what the plan was and I'm doing it. It creates a sense of fulfillment. And that thought and feeling leads to an action. You end up in the water doing what you'd intended. Thought, feeling, action. Ruth Anderson was the head of psychology services for the Great Britain cycling team at the Rio Olympics in 2016 and has also been the head of sports psychology for the Australian Olympic team. She knows a thing or two about peak performance. In her book, The Cycling Mind, she explains that we have more power than we think over our thoughts, and therefore feelings and actions. Chris Boardman once said that we can't always control what happens to us, but we can control how we respond. So in any aspect of life, be that sport, music, work or relationships, whilst there are so many things that are out of our control, there is always one thing that we have complete control over: ourselves. For example, before a race, we might be thinking about where a competitor's lined up or how lean and focused they look, that the weather might not be ideal, or perhaps you should have done more hill reps. This leads to feelings of anxiety and lack of confidence, and therefore wasted energy and being distracted as a net result. Instead, we can make the choice to focus on our race plan, knowing that we've done all our race prep, course recon, weather predictions for wind, what your swim plan is, what your sighting is going to be, what your watts and nutrition plan is going to be on the bike, and so on. This leads to a feeling of self-confidence, self-assuredness, and a more focused race. There are several links to being in a flow state that I've spoken out before, with research recording responses from athletes with excellent cognitive control using words such as automatic, autopilot, effortless, no conscious thought when describing their own peak performance. Ruth Anderson refers to our ability to control our cognition, emotion, and therefore behaviour as our performance control centre. She says the common trait in all the Olympic medalists she worked with across the numerous sports she's worked in has been the capacity to take control of their psychological state in critical moments. But it's not as simple as just knowing this, is it? Just knowing this doesn't mean you can do it. Much like just knowing that doing intervals will help our top end speed and long slow runs will increase our endurance, we have to train. We have to practice. And it's the same with this skill, developing it and honing it over time so it becomes second nature. There are so many stories of elite athletes choking or literally making errors on their way to certain victory, snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. People who break world records in the qualifiers but then fail to win in the finals. This has to be purely psychological. No one has swum, cycled or run faster over that distance than that person previously did not so long ago. They are physiologically the same. It has to be the mind that's different. So what can we do to help? How can we develop this? It initially starts with self-awareness and then self-regulation. You need to be aware of what you're thinking, feeling and doing to be able to assess if you need to make any changes. It's something that you can do on a daily basis, just picking a small part of everyday life and assessing those things. What am I thinking, feeling and doing in a given situation? What do I need to do to perform better? It's particularly hard when we're under stress. Another renowned British cycling mind expert, Dr. Steve Peters, refers to the chimp as the emotional limbic system part of the brain, and the prefrontal cortex as the human rational part of the brain. The chimp part of the brain would deal with lockdown as a complete disaster. No races, training groups being cancelled, all that wasted time and effort. What is the point? The rational decision maker would see it as a chance to focus on strength and conditioning, developing open water skills whilst the pools are shut, creating new race targets and goals, learning how to repair and optimise your bike, etc. I'm sure we've all seesawed between all of these feelings in the last few months. It all sounds very simple, but from what I've read over the last 15 years on these subjects is that you can't really judge a book by its cover. Circumstances and people are so much more complex than we'd like to think, and there are still so many unknown unknowns. Take, for example, philosopher and psychologist William James. He's often referred to as the father of American psychology. One of the most famous areas of his research, as far back as the late 1800s, proposed that the opposite of what we regard as being true, that our emotions create actions, exactly as Ruth Anderson says, when we're happy we smile, that emotion equals action. His research showed that the inverse was also true. Our actions can create emotions. There's a reason why triathlon legend Chrissie Wellington's social media handles are @ChrissieSmiles. In 1988, Dr. Fritz Strack conducted his now famous pencil experiment that I first read about in Professor Richard Wiseman's brilliant book, 59 Seconds. So what? Well, what I'm trying to say is that we spend so much time looking at our physical training, but often spend little time looking at our psychological training. I see so many amazingly dedicated athletes that fail to deliver the results they're truly capable of. Failure to deal with injuries, or something as simple as unexpected weather on race day or a change in race course. They've built a Ferrari engine, but it's got the engine management system of a 1970s Vauxhall Viva. In the same way that there are many effective ways to train the physical body, and each individual needs to find their own path, training the mind isn't only a journey that takes research and knowledge development, but in the same way as being fit and active has positive knock-ons on your day-to-day life, so will spending a bit of time looking at how you tick and what you can do about it to make lasting positive changes. None of this is easy. Changing something so fundamental as how you think is going to take education, focus, some home truths and lots of failure on the road. But that's what growing is. It's got to be worth the effort to try and learn. Some people don't believe that we have the power to change the way we think, but we do. It's just very hard and complex. It's also harder to quantify compared to an increased FTP or a lower CSS time. But there are ways, techniques, and it's been something that I feel is a foundation to all the other building blocks of training to sit on, not the other way around. It shouldn't be an afterthought, it needs to be a forethought. The one thing that we have control over in our life is ourselves. But more often than not, we allow ourselves to be taken by the tide, by social media, by the world around us, and before we know it, we've lost control of our thoughts. I'm taking back control, not in the political sense, but in the personal sense. I'm taking back control of my thoughts, slowly, and it's having an effect on myself and those around me. I'm not finished yet, not by a long, long way, but when is anything finished? I can always be faster, I can always be stronger, I can always think better, I can always feel better, and I can always be better.